Welcome to the Pinning Combination Podcast. KJ Pilcher, joined by Dick Briggs and Wyatt Schultz from the Predicament. Here, ready to talk a little college postseason wrestling. We had kind of the last wave of D1 conference tournaments here this last weekend with the Big Tens, Big 12, specifically the NAIA Championship tournament. So we'll recap some of that action, especially with the three Iowa schools that were involved in those two tournaments, and then the upcoming NCAAs for D2, the National Wrestling Coaches Association D3 tournament down in Coralville, and of course the at-large selections that were released yesterday for the D1s brackets. If you're watching this on a Wednesday, the final brackets will be released for the D1 tournament. But guys, let's start with the Big Tens out in University Park, Pennsylvania. Penn State hosted the 2021 championships, and Iowa, I tell you, they looked very impressive coming away with their 37th title and second in a row. I believe 159.5 points, and 4 champs, 6 finalists. What was it? 8 in the top 3 of their respective weights, and 9 fourth or better.
Yeah, I think that's what impressed me more than anything was the fact that you had 4 in the top, or 9 in the top 4. Nelson I thought had a great tournament. But the other ones, basically to finish at their seeds. You know, I guess that was the impressive part about them guys.
I think so too.
Right, and might mention that Penn State was second with 124, so it was 159.5 to 124, so a significant gap between first and second. However, throughout the course of the tournament, it seemed a lot closer because I think probably because Penn State was getting points on the backside, whereas Iowa had their 6 finalists. Penn State had 4, I think, as well, but still, you're not able to get the points until you get to the final championship matches. So, they're obviously added to that separation as well. So it kind of appeared that it was closer, and then not so close. Very nice job by Iowa.
And also, don't you think that with a 35.5 point spread, and I guess I would call this a smaller tournament, even though it's a mini nationals with the amount of teams in here, the quality of teams, does that point spread get bigger or smaller at the national tournament?
Probably smaller, because I think they won't have as many points likely at the top, but that's true with all of the teams. I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, it'll be interesting, because you do have 4 guys, 4 champs are all ranked number 1. That very well could transfer over to the national level. And you still have guys like Cassiope and Warner and DeSanto who are ranked 3rd and maybe projected to be in that 1, 2, 3 type of placing possibly. So, it could transfer over, but it's hard to say. You're probably not going to get a 4th by the Nelson Brands at the national tournament, obviously.
You can throw Young into that category as well.
Mm-hmm.
But the national tournament, something always happens, and people don't typically wrestle two seed. Sometimes above, sometimes below, but something always happens where you're scrambling trying to recover from with most teams. So it just it's like, who can avoid that the most? Iowa's had that the last couple of years. Well, not last year, but the year before, they had some upsets early on, and had to try and regroup after that. So hopefully that doesn't happen.
And hopefully, if it does happen, it happens to the other schools.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's kind of interesting. Obviously, kind of the elephant in the room. The one weight that didn't really work out too well for Iowa Max Murin was seated second, went 0-2, gave up a couple big moves in each of his, kind of one big move in each match that really kind of sealed his fate both times. But then to look at the fact that, he has 3 losses on the year, and they're to the individuals that finished first, second, and third at the Big Ten tournament. That's not necessarily, the moral victory that they're going to hang their hat on, but it's something that, hey, now that you got an at-large berth, you can shake it off and just kind of regroup and get back to it. Not the performance they wanted from him, but when you look at it, it's like, gosh, that was just kind of a tough road for you.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing is, and if you noticed that Liam Cronin at 25 also was the number 2 seed and went 0-2.
Right. Yeah.
We kind of talked about a couple of things last week. One, I started to talk about I had concerns at 149, and I don't know why, but I just had a feeling, and it came to pass, I guess. But so hopefully, that can work as motivation for him. As far as the seed's concerned, we kind of mentioned this too. When you only wrestle within your conference, it kind of makes it, and a lot of times there's some people were held out, or their duels didn't happen, or something like that. So it's kind of difficult to seed. I think it's gonna be even more difficult to seed at the national tournament and get it correct, because if you look at the seeds and how they finished, they didn't do a good job of seeding necessarily. They number 1 was fine. They only missed one there, but after that, they had the seeds were kind of all over the place.
Right.
So.
Yeah, those top 2 honestly are mostly slam dunks. There are very few weights where it's hard to miss on 1-2. So you're going to get a RBY DeSanto final. You're going to get 141's a little different just because the talent was so deep. Even though you had a 1-2 with Ironman and Nick Lee, but you knew you were going to get Gable Stevenson, Paris, so it's easy to get the 1-2s right, probably more often than not. But like you said, the rest of it was pretty jumbled.
Believe it or not, only 4 number 2 seeds actually finished second.
Really?
5 of the 6 were below or didn't even place, and one of them won it at 97. So
okay.
Above the seed. So even number 2 was not easy to predict as well. So you had Murin, Cronin, and
I think Brown-Nagel.
Yeah, Brown-Nagel also didn't place.
Right.
So, and they were the number 2 seeds. So.
Yeah. 149 was one of those weights too that just was so deep when we talked about it. I didn't necessarily think Ridge Lovett was going to win or make the finals, but I said last week that as a number 7 seed, that was a tough go. That if he's your number 7 seed, that's a tough, deep weight class. And of course he ends up making the finals. So,
you had a good turn. That's a good call on your part, KJ.
Well, I didn't think he was going to win. I just knew the weight was deep and difficult.
It was kind of wide open.
Yeah, outside of Sasso.
Right.
So any other weight classes really stand out to you? I thought the 141s, Lee had a heck of a match with Rivera in the semis where it looked like maybe Rivera gassed a little bit and Lee was able to win. The match between Ironman and Lee was really entertaining. Even you saw the contrast to styles where Lee was more offensive and Ironman's counter ability came into play. I was really impressed with Kemmerer, the way he wrestled, coming away with the title there, and really handling. I thought really controlled the match with Storochi. Miles Amin looked really good. And then of course Gable Stevenson, holy buckets. That was man's work there in the finals against Paris.
He's so athletic and made it look easy, and even got a little cocky on the edge of the mat there. And
Yeah.
that always endures a lot of fans, and especially not Iowa fans.
Yeah.
And so he's very good. Yep.
I think as far as the Iowa guys are concerned, I thought Kemmerer was the one that really impressed me when he got into that scramble situation and the way he come out of that. It actually reminded me of that little bit of scramble with Lee and Tomasetto a couple years ago in the semifinals at the national tournament. That scramble sit type where Lee got that fall. But that's a situation that really reminded me of Kemmerer. And that really impressed me.
He has a knack for doing that. I mean, gosh, you take for granted just how steady and consistent he is, and his mat awareness. There are situations where he gets out of giving up points, and there are situations where he ends up getting points in matches that you're like, a lot of people would give up points. Some would even bail, and he just continues to wrestle through situations and positions and comes out either preventing points or getting his own. It's fun to watch.
I thought in terms of weights that kind of stuck out for me going into the tournament, 184 was I didn't know what to expect there. I knew Brooks was good, but man, he really stood out that I thought. And then the rest of it was really kind of a scramble. So Ben's finished second there, and then of course Nelson did a great job and wrestled 5 levels above his seed. And then one other thing that was interesting that to me was that the lowest. I was curious on this. What was the lowest seed to qualify for nationals?
Oh,
as an automatic qualifier. So you'll never come up with it. The 13th seed at 141 from Northwestern finished 6th and was a qualifier. How about that? That's pretty decent.
Yeah, I wouldn't have guessed that at all either. Genius.
There was actually a 12th seed as well that I believe. But another Northwestern wrestler at 165 finished 7th. So how about that?
Yeah, I thought they had a good tournament as well, actually.
Okay, 133 at 12 seed too.
That's pretty well.
Yep. So that it just goes to show a 13th and 2 12th seeds end up qualifying. So you're never out of it, right? That's why you're
right, and kind of goes along to your point too about how hard it was to really get things.
Seeds.
Right. Now, one thing I want to point out too, and it may not seem like such a big deal right now just because where they finished overall, but Michigan State for much of the tournament was in the top 5. They were right there on the edge of the top 5. They ended up finishing 8th, but the thing about this program is 5 years ago in 2016 when the championships were at the University of Iowa, they finished with 5 total victories. So they won 5 matches throughout the entire tournament. They scored 10.5 points. This year they ended up finishing 8th. There's 73.5 points. Northwestern and Minnesota kind of pulled ahead of them with their victories in the finals from Deacon and Gable Stevenson. But, they're right there within earshot of a top 5 finish, which in the Big Ten pretty impressive. And just to show how far they've come, that 10.5 points that they scored 5 years ago, this year, Rayvon Foley at 125 scored 15 by himself. Chase Saldate at 157, that finished fourth, scored 15.5. Then you have Jake Tucker at 65 that scored 10.5. Then you had Ken Caffrey, who finished fourth at 197, score 11.5. So you had 4 people in your lineup this year that scored as many or more points than the whole team scored, when these seniors entered the program. I mean, I think that says an awful lot. And I'm not sure how many qualifiers they came through with altogether. I want to say like 5 or 6. But, we were making jokes a few years ago about how they scored negative points at nationals, and Drake actually outscored them at that time. So they're doing some good things at Michigan State. There's improvements. I know some people pointed out the fact that Willie Miklas, former Iowa prep, wrestled at Missouri and then Iowa State when he finished up his career, is out there as an assistant coach now. So nobody's going to confuse them with the Iowas and the Penn States of the world or anything like that. But here they finished in the middle of the pack, ahead of Ohio State, even, and right there within an earshot of fifth. I think there were some good things. And, they always talk about, your chain is only as strong as its weakest link. I think that shows a little bit about, one of those weak links has gotten tougher and stronger. And that's a good thing to see, not just for the Big Ten or for Michigan State, but for college wrestling.
Yeah, that's encouraging for those kids, the coaches, and I counted 7 qualifiers, KJ. So
okay,
yeah, that's really.
I was just spitballing, so.
And they're only 4 points, as you indicated, 4 points out of 5th place. So that was real tight right in there. So yeah, very nice job. That'll, I don't know how they'll do it at nationals, but to get there is a victory for that program when you look back.
Yeah,
I actually hadn't kind of looked at it that way either. How much they've improved over the last 3 or 4 years. That is impressive. Not only that, it's got to help their recruiting process when they have that kind of a team and show that kind of an improvement.
Mm-hmm. No, for sure. So, any other last tidbits? The one thing we talked about, the margin of victory. I was surprised that the 35.5 points was the largest margin of victory for a Big Ten championship team since the 2010 team won it in Ann Arbor. Boy, I would have thought a couple of those Penn State teams would have had a bigger margin of victory, but it just kind of goes to show you just how dominant this team has been.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, and I looking at qualifiers, I think, what do I remember? I think the Big Ten, if I remember right, I think they averaged 9 qualifiers per weight.
Did they?
In one respect, it's almost easier to qualify in the Big Ten, after you add on the at-large qualifiers, than it is the other conferences. I know the conference is very tough, in terms of competition, but when in most cases 5 wrestlers, there's only 4 wrestlers at the weight that didn't qualify. So it's kind of that way to look at it too.
Sure. Well, let's transition to the Big 12, which was maybe kind of the opposite of the Big 10 as far as the team race goes. I tell you, that was an exciting last day on Sunday with the way the team race is shaken out, where you literally had 4 teams still in the hunt. for a team title going into the finals with Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, Iowa State, and Wyoming. I mean, that's pretty exciting when you have that type of team race. And of course, Oklahoma and Oklahoma State tied with 124 points and shared the team title. Okay, so a couple things here. One, I'm very surprised there's not some type of tiebreaker or criteria to determine an individual one winner in a team race. Second, how much worse is it that it's the two teams involved in the Bedlam series just because the rivalry between the two? I'm sure the last thing they want to do is share a title.
I know, isn't that a hoot?
Yeah.
And you were speaking of the tiebreaker, though. That's funny. They don't have something like that. Go by most individual champions, most runner-ups or something,
Yeah. Something, most finalists, most points scored,
Yeah.
match point scored or something, and the interesting thing, Oklahoma State got docked a team point on Saturday during like the 141 consolations.
That's right.
That ends up being the difference, So, that's a whole nother deal. But
now, in looking at the results, Oklahoma wrestled way in above their seeds and just had a great tournament. And Oklahoma State, I think, wrestled all right, but it just worked out that way. And so, it was, like you said, a cool battle to follow.
Yep. Of course, Iowa State was right in the thick of things. There, they have three in the finals with Ian Parker at 141, David Carr at 157, Gannon Gremmel at heavyweight. Carr wins his second straight conference title. Gremmel ends up avenging the loss in last year's finals and comes away with a conference title. And then, Parker and Damas, same thing, but this time it just goes in favor of Damas, but a good showing from Iowa State, who with the two at-large bids, Tarakina and Colbury got at-large bids, are going to send 8 to the national tournament.
Yeah, and when you bring up the Parker-Damas match, that was a tiebreaker match, and it seemed like this weekend there were a lot of matches, both in the Big Ten and the Big 12, that went to tiebreaker, or at least into sudden victory or whatever. Very close matches. So I don't know what that means, but it was interesting.
And I was just going to ask you, does that mean they're trying to keep things close, or is the balance between the kids, or those kids just that much more even, more balanced?
I think it's more balanced personally, but who knows what their strategy might be. So,
you almost wonder if the season hasn't contributed to that too.
mm-hmm.
I'll be honest with you. You could tell the conditioning is just not the same for a lot of guys. It wasn't just one in particular, but you could just tell conditioning is just not the same, even though most of them are probably feeling better and fresher, but just in match conditioning wasn't the same, and maybe that adds to it. But probably more of what you guys are saying with, guys are so close now. It's, a real thin line between, competitors. So one of the other performances that I thought really stood out for Iowa State, even though he didn't make the finals, Marcus Coleman came through. I want to say he placed third or fourth, 197, fourth. But I think all 4 of his victories in the tournament were by fall, including a pin over Tanner Sloan. in the consolation semis. So even though he wasn't a finalist and he finished fourth, he's going to move on and qualify, and that's 8 points right there added to the jar for Iowa State with those pins. So that's pretty impressive.
Right, and that's a guy that, for whatever reason, wasn't starting at the beginning of the year, and I obviously we don't know the reason why. Was he getting beat out? Was he not healthy? But we always knew he was there, and now he's a fourth place finisher in the conference and a national qualifier. So bravo to him.
Yeah, I guess he did only have the one full match too, didn't he? Mm-hmm. Otherwise, they were all falls. That's interesting.
Yep. So, yeah. So, I mean, I think 6 automatic qualifiers and 8 total. I think that's a pretty decent showing. I think Zach Redding did pretty well at 133 also, but I think all but 65 and 74 move on. I think that would be considered a good showing for the Cyclones.
Yeah, agreed.
I agree too.
It
was. I thought it was. I guess I was kind of tickled that Terrakina got the at-large, not knowing, I guess, what would really happen, basically across the board with at-larges, but to give them another qualifier, because you guys know probably as well as I do. The Big 12 is pretty solid conference as well as the Big 10s, so it's hard to keep some of those guys out.
Right. A couple other things to know, especially with the at-larges, Cade DeVos, South Dakota State, and Tanner Sloan both got at-larges there for the Jackrabbits. So I think they're taking 5, and that's one thing too. Cody Caldwell, an assistant coach there, has been part of the program here recently. I think he tweeted out the fact that they've steadily climbed over the last 3 years. Like they might have had 1 qualifier 2 years ago. They had 4 last year, even though they weren't able to compete. And then now 5 this year, including the 3 Iowans, Zach Price, Cade DeVos, and Tanner Sloan. So good for them up there in South Dakota.
Yeah, I agreed. Very nice. And, especially kind of, 4 years ago, they had a national champ and a different coach, if I remember right, was it 4 years?
Right.
And then so that, that changeover, they kind of had a tough year after that. And then they, so the new coaching staff has done a nice job of rebuilding that or building it back up.
One other thing to mention too, Troy Steiner out at Fresno State, this is probably going to be their last season, unfortunately. They had 2 qualifiers, Parco at 149, and I can't remember the other Bulldog that I believe got an at-large bid too. So, they're taking 2 there in their last tournament. So at least they'll have some representation. And it's not Big 12 related, but did you guys see the announcement during practice? Arkansas Little Rock has their first national qualifier.
I did see that. That was an at-large bid, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
Yeah, and little backstory on that. Kyle wrestled him down in the Liberty National Duels.
Really?
Their youth, yeah, and Kyle beat him. So,
oh, wow. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. He won the Liberty Nationals the day before, and then in the duels the next day, Kyle got him. So that was nice.
Wow, that's awesome. Nice pinning combination podcast connection to Arkansas Little Rock's first national qualifier.
I'm pretty sure that's Paul Bianchi from Michigan. So originally.
Yeah. So that's cool. I'm trying to think. One other thing before we talk about you and I, the 197-pound final. It all came down to that as far as the team goes. AJ Ferrari against the I think it's not Samuelson, but for the Wyoming wrestler there in the final. And boy, he did everything he could to get that bonus point there to put Oklahoma State ahead. That was pretty cool. That was pretty cool to see somebody go out there with their team in mind. Obviously, he was individually first, but once he had an opportunity to keep going for points, he tried like hell to get that bonus point. Gave up a takedown when he was trying to go up by 8, which helped secure the tie between Okie State and Oklahoma. But it was cool to see that effort there to try to help his team. But to you and I, maybe not the overall performance they were looking for. Still had 4 automatic qualifiers, 2 champs. They end up with 2 more at-large bids, but Brody Teskey in his first year back with UNI ends up becoming a Big 12 champ, and freshman Parker Keckeisen. And I'll share a real funny story about Parker as well, but he looked good. He looked good. That in the finals, he exploded right off the whistle, and got that first takedown, and then was in control. I tell you what, I've just been very impressed with him.
Yeah, he's so good and so active on his feet. You're going to get 7 minutes of wrestling out of him, and he's going to be fun to watch wrestle for the next 3 years, for sure.
And that, to me, that goes with any wrestler when you give it that full 7 minutes, win or lose. But Keckeisen is, like you say, is a blast to watch.
Right. I guess
that effort.
This is 3 years, so maybe the next 4 years, I guess. Maybe.
Yeah. The interesting thing is with him, talking to him last week, he said he was a late bloomer. He was a 2-time state champion in Wisconsin. I believe he wrestled with the Askren Wrestling Academy there. But he said he was a late bloomer, but Lee Roper, the assistant at UNI, was in real early in recruiting with him. And he said, because I asked him, why did you choose UNI? You're Wisconsin there. Why UNI? And he mentioned that Lee Roper told him, was in real early on the recruiting process and told him, hey, you're going to be something special. You've got that. You've got the skills to really make a dent. So he was in early, had faith in his ability, and just knew how they would be able to develop him. So when other schools came calling, it was just like, yeah, no thanks. I'm going with the guy that picked up on me first. That kind of deal. And it turns out to be a great relationship. The 4th straight year, UNI's won the 184-pound title at the Big 12. That's a pretty cool stat when you think about it. Drew Foster, Taylor Lujan, now Parker Keckeisen. And to think Parker lost the wrestle-off at the beginning of the year to Keegan Moore. And he mentioned that loss to Keegan Moore in the wrestle-off, that there are 2 things he could, at that time, he had to kind of gut check, and there are 2 things you could do. You could, 1, take a back seat and settle for being a reserve, or you could get right back to work and keep pushing and getting better, and that's what he did. And, of course, we know Moore, there might be a little bit of a rocky deal with him, but he ended up moving up to 97, and Keckeisen stepped in at 84. And, it's worked out great for both. Keckheisen and the team.
Yeah. It's a good story. Let's hope it goes to a step on the podium in 2 weeks or a week and a half.
You know, and that's almost like the faith that Randy Pugh had with Drew Foster.
Yep, there certainly is a parallel there. You know, I think Parker maybe has a little bit stronger resume, I guess you would say, even though we all knew how good Drew could be. You know, even without that state title, but yeah, there are some parallels where Randy Pugh recognized the potential that Foster had and developed it, and look what happened with him becoming a national champion. And you know, see what Roper noticed with Keckheisen. It's turned out well. You know, interestingly, you know, Teskey, the other UNI champ, you know, he was somebody that I remember at the beginning of the season during media day said he had something to prove. You know, coming back from Penn State, transferring to UNI, he claimed he had something to prove, and here, you know, he's had a great season. Only one loss, I believe it was to Arizona State. Is that right?
Could be
At the Iowa State
so.
in Ames.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
But you know, in the Arizona State 25-pounder, I can't remember his name, but he's 11-0 right now. So, you know, that's not a bad loss at all. But Teskey, you know, he comes through and wins a title. I don't know if there's much left for him to prove now. I mean, you know, I think he's come back and really showed how quality of a wrestler he is. I don't think anybody's surprised by that. But he certainly seems to be at home with UNI.
Oh, I'm sure he disagrees with you 100%. There's a whole lot left to
I'm sure.
The Big 12 is nice, and yeah, your point taken. But yeah, it's the Nationals, of course. That's what he's interested in. But you know, I had some great stories with Jan and Laura, Tristan Lara, gaining automatic qualifying berths. So that was nice, and with those two wrestlers.
Yeah, I mean, Jan only had one match, and that was an exhibition match from the North Dakota State double duel, right?
Right. I think he had some nagging injuries, and you know, kind of like Renyan as well. So.
Courtney from Iowa State or from Arizona State.
Okay. All right. So that would be it. Yeah.
Sorry, interesting with Lara, and we talked about Preco from Fresno State, and then also throwing Dagan. They had a mini round robin going in that tournament. Preco beat Dagan twice on the front side and the back side for third and fourth, but lost to Lara on the front side, and then Dagan beat Lara on the back on the consolation. So it's very balanced right in there with those three guys for sure. And all
pretty cool.
Nationals.
Pretty cool. So the 4 automatic bids there, and then with the at-larges, Lance Runyon at 174, he'll be moving on, and then of course heavyweight Carter Isley, who was a qualifier last year. You know, even though they didn't get a wrestle, good to see him get an at-large too at heavyweight. Probably was a no-brainer. You know, he's 95, maybe a little more surprised running at 75, but he had a couple good wins during the season.
Right, and with Runyon, he medical forfeited out of the tournament, so that was an issue there. With Isley, ended up finishing 6th. I'm glad he was able to get in. I believe he was 6th anyway. So I'm glad he was able to get in, and because he's a quality wrestler for sure.
He had a lot of tiebreaker matches. Isley, I think, had 3 of them.
It's a heavyweight.
Yeah.
So just looking at some of the other former Iowa preps that are going to be at St. Louis competing, and hopefully I caught all of them. We already mentioned Tanner Sloan, Cade DeVos for South Dakota State at 157 and 197.
Zach Price.
At larges. And then you got Zach Price, who is at 133 with an automatic bid. Bryce West from Northern Illinois. He's 10-5. Zach Price 14-4. But Bryce West earned an automatic bid from the Mid-American Conference at 133. Michael Blockus at 149 from Minnesota, and then Max Lyon from Purdue at 184. He got 7th at 184, and he's qualified for the 2nd straight year.
Yeah, good luck to those former Iowa high school reps.
Really.
So NAIA had their championships this last weekend. Grandview was going for their 10th straight title, I believe. But Life University out of Georgia stepped in and came away with the team title, preventing Grandview from its 10th straight. Came down to the very last match, didn't it, Wyatt?
You know, that turned out to be a great tournament for the simple reason between those 2 schools, they were so far ahead of everybody else. I don't remember what exactly the point spread was, but you're right. It came down to heavyweight, but there were so many key matches during that whole tournament. There was, I believe, 7 head-to-head matches between Life and Grandview, and Life won 6 of the 7.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And then also Grandview had 2 number 2 seeds that didn't place. Caldwell at is it 65? I believe. I can't remember exactly what weight he's at.
Yes.
He got to that semifinal round, had concussion protocol, and had to, or now what must have been a quarter anyway. So he had to default back out to 8th place. You know, so him alone by defaulting was basically the difference in the tournament. You know, and Nick, I'm sure, is disappointed in the fact that, you know, you always want to win a national title, but if you're going to lose to somebody as one of your former wrestlers, former national champs, Omi Acosta, so maybe it's a little bit bittersweet. But, you know, they both had 10 All-Americans. So it's not like it was really a disappointing tournament for either one. They both qualified 12. So, you know, and those 2 were just so far ahead of everybody that it was a 2-team race through the whole tournament.
Right. I kind of put some numbers together and looked at it. Life had wrestled 15 spots above their seed, which is that's very impressive. Now, here's the thing that's the other side. Grandview wrestled 31 spots below their seed. So, I mean, that's very disappointing in terms of, you know, wrestling to seeds and that sort of thing. So, and like you said, they had 2 number 1s that didn't place. Grandview did. They only had 2 guys above and 2 guys that wrestled 2 seed of their 12. All the rest were below. Life, on the other hand, had they were the 5th and 10th seed end up 2nd, so they wrestled way above their seed there, and those 2 guys, and then 10 other guys that wrestled above their seed. So it was, you know, Life, you know, came to wrestle, and Grandview evidently had a couple of bad breaks with the concussion protocol and you know, some other breaks. And it's not just that when you're wrestling 31 below your seed. So it's the whole team that really kind of could have helped make that up, I guess. Those 5-point difference between first and than second in the team race.
But, overall, it was a pretty good tournament, fun tournament to watch, and then, of course, being able to watch Brendan Swafford for Graceland and Isaac Bartell from Norris Springs, Montana State Northern. They were both, to me, I guess, were kind of dominating. Bartell had a semifinal match that got me a little nervous because he's normally one of those, and Swafford's the same way. They normally get out there and get a takedown right off the bat. And this time with Swafford in the finals, he got in a scramble situation and made that whole match close. Bartell's was the same way in the semifinals. But it was good to watch those two kids. Swafford was a 7th place finisher as a freshman and a national champ last year and this year. And Bartle was finished 3rd as a freshman and then had 2 runner-ups behind Evan Hansen out of Grandview, that 4-time national champ. So it was fun. And I know Grandview didn't have a national champ this year.
Wow. Just kind of going off with Isaac Bartle. He had a fall. You talked about his dominance. He had a fall in a tech fall to open up. He had that 5-2 decision in the semifinals.
Right.
But overall, what he was able to do, he only gave up 4 points in the entire tournament. And I think he outscored opponents to the tune of 37-4 in his 4 matches. So, that's pretty impressive. Of course, he was a former Mason City prep, and it's Swafford with Graceland. See those former Iowa preps, of course, Graceland. Is that down? Is that Lamoni?
Yeah, Graceland is Lamoni. Yeah, and Swafford actually on that finals match took him down right away, got a cradle locked up, and tried to roll across himself, and it didn't work out so well, and ended up getting reversed, and it was almost like it just took him out of that whole match, and it was close from there on. And got a takedown, I believe, with in the last 30 seconds or 20 seconds to win that match. But it's still pretty impressive in the fact that you're a 3-time All-American, 2-time national champ already.
Uh-huh. So we'll see if Grandview can get their streak going again next season. I'm sure they'll be ready to go. They'll reload and be ready here next season. Well, hey, let's look at what's coming up here this weekend. We've got the National Wrestling Coaches Association Division III Championships in Coralville at the Extreme Arena. Wrestling starts at 11 o'clock now on Friday, and I believe Saturday starts at noon. They do have the brackets and seatings out. It's on Flow Arena. It should be a fun, interesting weekend, and I'm sure everybody's grateful for at least an opportunity to have an end of the year championship meet.
Dick, go ahead.
Yeah. Without question, for sure, grateful. I mean, there's so many hands that had to make this happen at such a quick pace. We talked to one of them, Dick Simmons, last week, but man, I'm so grateful that they've got some sort of competition and looking at the Division II brackets, which we'll talk about in a minute. but they're so much smaller than the Division III. This is 32-man brackets, whereas those are 12 to 11 to 14 in size, and so I'm very grateful for that. And there's a lot of kids that are going to get to wrestle in this tournament that otherwise wouldn't get to. And, all right, company, we got a guest.
And also, speaking of that, no team scores are kept, but at the Division IIIs, does that bother you, or is that you're just grateful to be wrestling?
I'm grateful. I wished it was, because we in Iowa have some pretty healthy teams at Division III. Obviously Wartburg with Co second in the arc, Loras third in the arc. Those three are going to be right at the top in terms of having an opportunity to win it this year. A couple other teams coming in, Augsburg, of course, though they're down by their standards a little bit, but still, some great teams. And so, yeah, I think it would have been kind of fun to have that, but it is what it is, and we're happy to have it. So, but I will mention this: there's a lot of kids, a lot of Iowans at the D3 level, and I kind of went through the local teams and to give our Iowa kids, high school kids, an opportunity to be mentioned here. So, by weight at 125, Brady Kiner is seated fourth from Wartburg and Carlisle. 133 seated eighth is Joe Pins from Waller and Buchampstead. 12th is Zach Thompson from Loras and Perry. Second is Brock Henderson from Co and North Lynn. And we have a brother act in that going later on here, you'll find out. 141, Riley Wright from Co in Denver is seated fourth. Jalen Schropp is seated third from Loras and Williamsburg. 149, Josh Gerke from Co and Xavier is seated fourth. Luke Radke from the University of Dubuque and Benton Shellsburg is unseated. And then at second seed is Brady Fritz from Wartburg and South Tama. 157, number one seed Tristan Burt from Milliken in Illinois, and Dubuque, but a high school at Dubuque Waller. He's seated first, and then Brady Henderson is seated fourth from Co and North Lynn. At 165, Braden Burt from Milliken, cousin, was from Western Dubuque, and then he's seated one. Number 8 is KJ, is one of your favorite wrestlers from Western Dubuque. So we got two Western Dubuque guys in the same bracket there. Riker?
Yeah. Riker Karimsky.
That's right. Yeah. It's a great name, isn't it?
Yeah. One of my favorite. I tell you, I went and got a selfie with him his senior year at state, and just told him how much I thought his name was pretty cool. And he looked at me like I was an alien. He couldn't understand why, but he was very nice. He's a great kid off the mat as well, and humored me, took the selfie, and I'm sure he was probably like, who was that weirdo? But yeah, great name.
His name sounds like a bone crusher, doesn't it? Just
yeah, he was destined to be tough, that's for sure, with a name like Riker Karimsky. So,
and then also at 165, seeded third is Zane Mulder from Wartburg and Dallas Center Grimes. 174, seeded one, Kyle Briggs, Wartburg Jefferson. Number 12, Kristen Westfall from Cohen in Washington, Iowa. Number 3 seed was Jacob Krakow from Loras and Iowa Valley. And then a local wrestler, Logan Sears from University of Dubuque and Sierra Rapids, Washington, is also in that bracket. 184, number 9 is Cale Kruger from Wartburg in Denver. Number 5 is Ryan Schott, Co in Iowa City, Regina. And then Jacob Scherzer, Cornell and Sierra Rapids Jefferson is in that bracket as well. 197, Cole Kreinbring from Co in Assumption is the 12th seed. 285, Caleb Reeves, Co in Sigourney is the 3rd seed. Number 6 seed is Wyatt Wright from North Scott, and Alex Husendorfer from Cornell and Sierra Prairie, and Wright's North Scott and Loras. So it's kind of neat that Co has 9 of their 10 kids that are wrestling are Iowa kids. Wartburg, 6 of their 10 are Iowa kids. So good representation from those schools. I didn't have time, but I don't know if there's any from BV, KJ, they're Iowa kids, or Simpson, or Central. I did not check that, or Nebraska wrestling. So.
Yeah, I haven't. I've only been focused on our area teams. I'll have to look. Not doing a good job as a alum, but
That's a lot.
um,
Well, the other thing, speaking of that tournament, Baldwin Wallace is coached by Jamie Gibbs, of course, from Western Dubuque, and their conference will not let those schools participate in this since it's not an NCAA tournament, which is too bad. You'd like to see, I guess, more teams, or maybe not necessarily bigger brackets, but more individuals, more teams in this rather than the 34.
and Dick, isn't the WIAC in the same boat where the teams pretty much were told, yeah, you're not going.
Right.
And I think that was to the dismay of Dave Malachek at Wisconsin Lacrosse. Not only did they get wiped out from being able to host the NCAA tournament, but then when this opportunity came up, WIAC school said, yeah, you guys aren't participating,
Right.
which is double disappointment.
Right. And the WIAC, which is 6 Wisconsin teams, and at one time it was bigger and it's kind of drifted around. It's currently at 6. And even in their conference tournament, Whitewater didn't get to participate for whatever reason, so it was down to 5. But certainly Dave Malachek and Lacrosse, they're a great team this year. In one poll before they did the next poll, they were second ranked team in the country. So I'm guessing he really wanted to come down and have a chance at that title. And of course, Dave Malachek, it's somewhat his home since he spent was it 2 or 3 or however many years at Xavier as their first head coach, I believe.
Yeah, he was for a few years where he was a coach at Regis and then the Regis LaSalle combined program.
Right.
Even before they actually had the school put together, he was coaching them. So yeah, he always enjoys coming down to this area. He's got still a lot of friends and a lot of connections. So yeah, that's a disappointment there.
Another interesting fact about the Iowa high school kids, with the seeding, 3 of them are seeded number 1, 2 of them are seeded number 2, and 4 of them are seeded number 3. So they've done well, and hopefully they'll do well in this tournament.
Yeah. So I know the attendance is limited for this tournament and stuff, but Wyatt, are you going to be down there for both days?
I'm planning on it, especially since I'm retired.
Yeah.
From my regular job, but yeah, no, I'm planning on being down there. Starts at 11 o'clock on Friday and like you said, on noon on Saturday. So Friday will probably be a fairly long day to get down to that 80-man All-American round.
Mm-hmm. So I know Coach Briggs and I will be down there both days as well. We'll arrange for some between session updates on Facebook Live with the On the Mats page. If you guys could tune in and follow that on Facebook, we'll get together and get some updates throughout the days on Friday and Saturday if you can't make it down there in person. So we look forward to that. And just the message, just to echo the message that we've said multiple times, it's just a good thing that they're having a safe alternative to an end of the season championship meet, so they don't have to go 2 years in a row without. So fingers crossed this is the last time they have to do something like this.
And some of those schools, like your Wisconsin schools, or that the conference that Baldwin Wallace is in, and your Eastern schools, that's been 2 years now without competition, and that's got to be tough.
Yeah, that's really hard on the athletes and
I'd say
the programs. you know, it's kind of hurt recruiting and stuff too, you would think.
Right. And when you say fingers crossed, I'll just say this, and we don't really need to discuss it, but you know there's going to be a lot of COVID tests being done at all levels, D1, D2, D3. And so hopefully everyone comes through that negatively, and it doesn't affect the wrestling or wrestlers like it affected the UNI basketball team in the Mag Valley or whatever it's called down there.
Yeah, we talked about it a little bit before we started the podcast, that you just hope it doesn't really impact a wrestler standing or even a whole team standing, from day to day, because it certainly would be hard to swallow to have say you make the finals on Saturday night and your test Friday night comes back positive, and you don't get a chance to compete and you end up finishing second, or if it even wipes out your entire team, depending on how the contact tracing protocols are. We saw that with UNI basketball, and there is a danger of that rearing its ugly head, especially at the D1s, D2s in St. Louis.
That would really be unfortunate.
Right.
So speaking of the D2s, Upper Iowa will compete in the D2 championships this weekend. They have 4 qualifiers heading down. Tate Murdy at 141, Eric Fought at 149, Chase Lensman at 157, Zach Rigg at 197. Those 4 will compete. I know Lensman was a super regional champion at 157, a former Monticello prep, and they may not have all the maybe the depth or the numbers to finish real high in the team race, but they've got 4 quality guys going down there that can make the podium.
Yeah, and Tate Murdy at 41, unseeded, of course, but he's got the number 2 seed right off the gate, so that'll be a little uphill battle there. Fought has the number 3 seed right off the bat, so they kind of maybe start off a little bit of a hole, but it's not like they can't overcome it.
Or they beat those guys and now they're the number 2 and number 3 seeds.
That's right.
That's how you look at it, right?
Yep, right. Be the bad draw, right? I remember a coach saying that to me when I said, "Hey, you got some tough draws." He's like, "We are the tough draw, right?" That's how it's supposed to work. But Lensman has put together an extremely strong season. We mentioned the Super Regional Championship. He's been ranked pretty much all season long. Got some quality wins throughout. So I think between him and Rigg, 2 guys with a really high potential for this weekend.
I think so too, and of course I don't know if a bye helps you or hurts you, but Rigg's got to bye the first round, so it automatically puts him in the quarters.
Right.
And like I say, I don't know if that's good or bad, but he's in the quarters.
Where that bye lands, if it's if it's on the backside and it puts you out into the medal round, that may be a good thing. I don't know. So, or lucky thing or whatever. But when you have small brackets like that, like you said, I think you can place with one win maybe or something. So.
In 57, it was one of them small brackets. I I went and penciled some of that out, and it's kind of interesting with an 11-man bracket, and you have 8 All-Americans, so kind of interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely not going to be your same tournament. The one thing with Rigg, he's 9-0. He was also a super regional champion to qualify. He's kind of put together a really strong season this year overall. He's just a redshirt freshman for Upper Iowa, so they've got a couple of talented kids who are also young. So this is just the kind of the building block for them, kind of going forward, with Rigg being a redshirt freshman and Lensman being a redshirt sophomore, or a true sophomore. Sorry.
I think there's some other Iowa kids on different teams. I know we talked about Malcolm on, and I think that there might be a couple others, but I do know that Malcolm, who was the number 1 ranked kid, ended up losing. I think he took 3rd, maybe in his regional. So he did qualify though. So hopefully he can battle back to the top.
And you got Portillo at 25, Nebraska Kearney, whose brother just finished 4th at the NAIAs.
Yep. And Portillo's the 4th seed there,
right.
3 this season. So yeah, he's somebody that's a past All-American, I believe. So see if they can follow that up. Also, just kind of looking here.
I think those were the only 2 I caught.
Okay.
They put Portillo and Malcolm.
Okay, I was kind of looking through. Yeah. Mankato doesn't have.
Right. I think they only qualified 3, if I'm not mistaken, because I looked that one up myself.
Okay. Yep. And none of them are the islands that they have on the rock.
Right.
Okay. So, all right. And so, of course, that's in St. Louis too. So we'll actually have a little bit of a barometer for the D1 tournament. And they'll have kind of a run through down there to know maybe best practices by the time the D1 guys get down there for this whole thing. So maybe we'll know a little bit more next week about how the COVID testing will impact and influence things after that D2 tournament. So it'll be a little bit different since D2s are only 2 days, D1s are 3. So we'll see.
And also, I don't think they're at the same facility, are they?
I would guess not.
Yeah.
If D1's being in an enterprise center, that's a little
right.
big of an arena for
D2s.
So, all right. Any last thoughts or any parting shots that you guys have from last weekend or what's coming up here on the agenda this weekend?
Well, I guess I'll just mention I just put on the website today. I interviewed a couple of the girls from Iowa Wesleyan that were All-Americans out at the ladies tournament. And we got something coming up on Felicity Taylor.
And she was a national champion.
She was a national champion, McKendree.
Yep.
The 2 girls out of Iowa Wesleyan were Alana Sunland out of Monticello.
Okay.
And Daisy Schultz out of she's actually out of Bennett, Colorado. But I put them on the interviews on the website today.
Okay.
And I'm also, as soon as we get done here, I'm going to visit with Isaac Bartell out of Montana State Northern. So
okay.
Got some things lined up.
All right. So make sure you head to thepredicament.com to catch those interviews. It'll be great to catch up with them. And I'm glad you mentioned the women's tournament That was his last weekend as well. And Felicity Taylor's, of course, the former South Wind Prep, and her title there. So was good.
I'd like to thank our guest, Hercules, for making it.
I tried like heck to stiff arm him out of here, but he's got a head like a bowling ball. I just couldn't keep him out anymore. And he enjoys wrestling talk too. He was by my side during the Big Tens all weekend, so that was good.
Good for him.
Yep. And he's an attention hog. He had to give his 5 seconds of fame. So, yep. Thanks for Hercules popping in and everything. So make sure you get to the predicament.com to check out those interviews. We'll have preview features for the D2 and D3 championships at the Gazette.com. Make sure to tune in to On the Mat on Facebook, my Facebook page, to catch the three of us throughout the D3 championships at Extreme Arena. And if look back to last week's podcast, Dick Simmons is still looking for some volunteers at the D3 championships. So if you get an opportunity and can help out on Friday, make sure to contact Dick Simmons. You can find that on the podcast. Dick shared his contact information on last week's podcast as well. So if you can help out, that would be awesome for the student athletes that are going to compete this weekend.
And to add to that, he's posted that if you work Friday, you get Saturday entrance admission. So sweet.
So that's a good deal. Not only do you get to watch stuff on Friday, you get in for free on Saturday and see the whole deal. So certainly worth the effort. But anyway, Dick, Wyatt, thanks a lot for talking wrestling together. Nathan, thanks for producing everything. And Wyatt, why don't you send us home?
Let's keep wrestling on the move.